The thundering crack of gunfire split the quiet afternoon air as Lillian Zachary clutched her small leather satchel of books to her chest and dove beneath the overturned stagecoach. Blood trickled from a shallow graze on her cheek where splinters had flown when the first bullet struck the coach. Her heart hammered against her ribs as dust billowed around her, the sounds of horses and men shouting drowning out her terrified breathing. "Hand over the strong box," a gruff voice commanded as boot steps circled the stagecoach. "We know you're carrying the mine payroll, and we aim to take it." Mineral Park, Arizona Territory, 1885, had seemed like a dream come true when the town council had written to offer her the teaching position. After 3 years teaching in Boston's crowded schoolrooms, Lillian had yearned for adventure and a chance to make a real difference. Now, crouched in the dirt with 3 masked bandits surrounding the coach and the driver lying motionless on the ground above her, she wondered if her 24 years of life would end here, 10 miles short of her destination. "There's a woman." One of the bandits called, spotting her blue calico dress beneath the coach. "Pull her out." Rough hands grabbed her ankles, dragging her into the harsh sunlight. Lillian fought, kicking and screaming as they hauled her to her feet. Her honey blonde hair had come loose from its pins, falling in tangled waves around her face. "Looks like we got ourselves a bonus," the tallest bandit sneered, his breath reeking of whiskey as he grabbed her arm. "Town's new schoolteacher, I reckon. Mighty pretty one at that." The stagecoach driver groaned, still alive but bleeding from a head wound. The other passenger, a traveling salesman, sat with his hands up, face pale with terror. "Please," Lillian said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Take whatever you want, but let us go." The leader laughed, revealing tobacco-stained teeth beneath his bandana. "Oh, we'll take what we want all right." But first, a rifle shot cracked through the air, and the bandit clutching Lillian's arm jerked backward, crying out as a bullet tore through his shoulder. The other 2 whirled around, guns drawn, searching for the source of the attack. That's when she saw him. A lone rider emerged from the tree line, rifle raised, dust swirling around him and his mount. He sat tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered and imposing. Even at a distance, Lillian could see the determination in his posture. "Drop your weapons," the rider called, his voice deep and commanding, "or the next one goes through somebody's head." The bandits hesitated, clearly calculating their odds. The wounded one had fallen to his knees, clutching his shoulder and moaning. "You're outnumbered, mister," the leader shouted back, keeping his gun trained on Lillian. "Ride away if you value your life." The rider urged his horse forward at a walk, still aiming his rifle. "I count different. One of yours is down, leaving 2 of you against me. And I'm not alone." As if on cue, 2 young boys emerged from the brush on either side of the road, both holding rifles almost too big for them. They couldn't have been more than 12 and 10 years old, but they handled their weapons with unmistakable confidence. The leader cursed, eyes darting between the approaching man and the boys flanking them. "This ain't worth dying over, boys," he finally muttered to his companions. "We'll catch the next coach." He backed away slowly, then turned to run toward their horses tethered in the brush. The uninjured bandit followed, but the wounded one remained kneeling in the dirt. "Please," the wounded man begged as the rider approached. "Don't kill me." The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, keeping his rifle trained on the remaining bandit. Up close, Lillian could see he was in his early 30s, with sun-weathered skin, a strong jawline covered by several days' growth of beard, and eyes the color of a summer sky. A battered hat shaded his face, and dust covered his denim and leather clothes. "Boys," he called without looking away from the bandit, "check on the driver and the other passenger." The children approached cautiously, rifles still ready. The older one, with hair the same shade of brown as the man's, knelt beside the driver while the younger boy, blond and freckled, helped the shaking salesman. "The driver's alive, Pa," the older boy reported. "Head's bleeding bad, though." The man nodded, then looked at Lillian for the first time. Their eyes met, and something passed between them: concern, relief, something unnameable. Madam, are you hurt? Just scared, Lillian managed, straightening her spine. And grateful. He nodded, then turned back to the bandit. With quick, practiced movements, he bound the man's hands behind his back using a length of rope from his saddle. My name is Owen Grayson, he said, addressing Lillian while securing the prisoner. These are my sons, Thomas and Samuel. He nodded toward the boys, who were now helping the driver sit up. We've got a ranch about 3 miles from here. We can take you all there to tend to the wounded before continuing to town. I'm Lillian Zachary, she replied, smoothing her rumpled dress, the new schoolteacher for Mineral Park. A flicker of surprise crossed Owen's face. The schoolteacher, we've been waiting on you. My boys will be in your class. The boys looked up at the mention, studying her with undisguised curiosity. The younger one, Samuel, whispered something to his brother that made Thomas elbow him and blush. Pa, Thomas called, the driver says the wheel axle broke when they were attacked. Coach won't make it to town. Owen considered this information, then nodded decisively. We'll take the driver on my horse. Samuel, you ride with him. Thomas, help Miss Zachary gather her belongings. Mister, he looked at the salesman questioningly. Peterson, the shaking man supplied. Mr. Peterson and I will bring the prisoner. We can send word to the sheriff once we reach the ranch. As Thomas helped Lillian retrieve her luggage from the stagecoach, she noticed the boy kept stealing glances at her. Finally, he spoke in a low voice. Madam, are you really going to be our teacher? I am, she confirmed with a gentle smile. I look forward to having you in my class. The boy nodded solemnly. Pa's been teaching us at home since Ma died, but he says we need proper schooling. He hesitated. You're prettier than our last teacher. She was old and had a mustache. Lillian couldn't help but laugh despite the circumstances, the sound surprising after the terror of moments before. Well, thank you, I think, though I hope to be valued for more than just my appearance. Thomas looked embarrassed. Yes, madam. Pa says it's what's in a person's heart and head that matters most. Your father sounds like a wise man, Lillian replied, glancing toward Owen, who was helping the driver onto his horse. He is, Thomas said with unmistakable pride. He's the best man in the whole territory. As they gathered their things and prepared to walk to the Grayson ranch, Lillian found herself studying Owen Grayson more closely. He moved with confidence and authority, but there was a gentleness in how he handled the injured driver and spoke to his sons. His eyes, when they occasionally met hers, were watchful and protective. The small party set out for the ranch with Owen leading the way, his rifle ready in case the other bandits returned. Samuel rode with the injured driver on Owen's horse, while Thomas walked beside Lillian, occasionally pointing out plants and animals with boyish enthusiasm. How long have you lived in Arizona territory? Lillian asked as they walked, trying to distract herself from her aching feet and the lingering fear of the attack. Born here, Thomas answered proudly. Pa came west after the war between the states, met Ma here. She died when Samuel was 4. I'm very sorry to hear that, Lillian said softly. Thomas shrugged with the resilience of youth. We get by, Pa does his best. He glanced ahead where his father walked, then lowered his voice. He gets lonesome, though, even if he won't say it. Before Lillian could respond, Owen called back to them. Ranch is just over this rise. We'll be there in 10 minutes. As they crested the hill, Lillian caught her breath at the view below. The Grayson Ranch spread across a small valley, a sturdy 2-story house with a wide porch surrounded by several outbuildings. A corral held a dozen horses, and cattle grazed in the distance. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwood trees providing welcome shade. It's beautiful, she murmured. Pa built the house himself, Thomas said proudly. Added on the 2nd story last year. By the time they reached the ranch, Lillian's feet were blistered in her city shoes, and exhaustion from the attack and journey threatened to overwhelm her. Owen must have noticed, for he approached her as they reached the yard. Miss Zachary, you look dead on your feet. Let's get you inside where you can rest while I tend to the wounded. The house interior was surprisingly comfortable, and well kept for a widower with 2 boys. The main room held a large table, a stone fireplace, and several bookshelves stuffed with volumes. Owen directed her to a chair while he sent Thomas for water and bandages. "I'll need to ride for the doctor and sheriff once I've got everyone settled," Owen explained, his voice low and steady. "The boys will stay with you. Thomas is handy with a rifle if those bandits come back, but I doubt they will, Mr. Grayson," Lillian said, touching his arm impulsively. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You and your boys saved my life." His eyes met hers, and for a moment, his composed expression softened. "No thanks needed, Miss Zachary. Couldn't let Mineral Park lose its new teacher before she even arrived." Their gazes held for a beat too long before he cleared his throat and turned away to help the injured driver to a cot. While Owen tended to the wounded, Thomas showed Lillian to the kitchen where she could wash up. The boy chatted excitedly about school and how Samuel had never been to a proper classroom. "Will you teach us poetry, Miss Zachary?" he asked as he pumped water into a basin for her. "I like poetry, but Pa only knows a few poems." "Of course," she promised, touched by his enthusiasm. "I have books of poetry in my trunk." By the time Owen prepared to ride for town, Lillian had helped clean and bandage the driver's head wound, made coffee for everyone, and won the complete devotion of both Grayson boys with her stories of Boston and the ocean. "Boys," Owen instructed as he checked his saddle, "mind Miss Zachary while I'm gone. Keep the prisoner secured in the tool shed, but give him water. I'll be back by nightfall with the sheriff." "Yes, sir," both boys answered in unison. Owen turned to Lillian. "There's food in the pantry if you get hungry. Make yourself at home." After he rode away, Lillian helped the boys prepare a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and dried apples. The salesman, Mr. Peterson, rested on the porch, still shaken from the ordeal, while the driver slept on the cot in the main room. As they ate at the kitchen table, Samuel finally asked the question Lillian had seen forming since they arrived. "Are you going to stay at our house, Miss Zachary?" "No, Samuel," she explained gently. "Once your father returns with help, I'll go to town. The school board has arranged lodging for me there." The boys exchanged a look of disappointment. "But you could stay here," Samuel persisted. "We've got an extra room upstairs. It used to be Ma's sewing room." "Samuel," Thomas hissed, embarrassed by his brother's forwardness. "That's very kind," Lillian said with a smile, "but I need to be in town near the school." "The school's not that far," Samuel argued, "and Pa could take you in the wagon every day." Thomas kicked his brother under the table, but Samuel continued undeterred. "Pa doesn't smile much, but he smiled at you." Lillian felt her cheeks warm. "Your father was just being polite. Now, why don't you tell me what subjects you've been studying with him?" The conversation shifted to safer topics, but Lillian found herself thinking about Owen Grayson's rare smile and the way his eyes had lingered on hers. As promised, Owen returned by nightfall with Sheriff Mills and Dr. Harper. The sheriff took the wounded bandit into custody, taking statements from everyone about the attack. The doctor examined the driver and declared him well enough to travel to town the next day. "Miss Zachary," Sheriff Mills said as he prepared to leave, "the town council sends their apologies for your rough welcome to Mineral Park. We've had trouble with those bandits for months. Mrs. Landry has your room ready at the boarding house." "Thank you, Sheriff," Lillian replied. "I'm grateful to the Graysons for their help today." The sheriff nodded. "Good family, the Graysons. Owen's one of the best men in the territory." His words unconsciously echoed Thomas's earlier praise. After the sheriff and doctor left, taking the prisoner with them, an awkward silence fell over the main room. The boys had been sent to bed, and the salesman had chosen to accompany the sheriff to town, leaving Lillian and Owen alone with the sleeping driver. "You should get some rest, Miss Zachary," Owen said, breaking the silence. "You can take my room tonight. I'll sleep out here." "I couldn't possibly displace you," she protested. "It's no trouble. Been sleeping rough since the war. One night on a chair won't hurt me." His tone left no room for argument. Owen showed her to his bedroom, a simple space with a patchwork quilt on the bed and a small desk beneath the window. "It's not fancy, but it's clean," he said, almost apologetically. "It's perfect," she assured him. "Thank you for everything today, Mr. Grayson." He paused at the doorway, his tall frame filling it. "Owen," he said quietly. "My name's Owen." "Owen," she repeated, the name feeling right on her lips. "And I'm Lillian." He nodded, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Good night, Lillian. Sleep well." After he closed the door, Lillian sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by the day's events. She had come west, seeking adventure and a new beginning, but she never expected it would start like this. As she lay down on the bed that smelled faintly of leather and pine, she found herself wondering about the man who had saved her life, the quiet widower with gentle hands and watchful eyes who was sleeping in a chair just down the hall. Morning arrived with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee and bacon. Lillian dressed quickly in her spare traveling dress and made her way downstairs to find Owen at the stove while the boys set the table. "Good morning," Owen greeted her, his voice warm. "Hope you slept well." "Better than I expected after yesterday's excitement," she admitted. Breakfast was a lively affair with Samuel peppering Lillian with questions about Boston and teaching, while Thomas tried to maintain an air of maturity but couldn't hide his own curiosity. The stagecoach driver, feeling much improved, joined them and expressed his gratitude to the Graysons for their help. "I've sent word to town," Owen explained as they finished eating. "They're sending a wagon for you and your things. Should be here by mid-morning." Disappointment flickered through Lillian, though she knew it was foolish. Of course she would go to town, that was the plan all along. But something about the Grayson home and family had touched her heart in the brief time she'd been there. "Miss Zachary," Samuel said, interrupting her thoughts, "will you come back and visit us? Even when it's not school." Before Lillian could answer, Owen spoke. "Samuel, Miss Zachary will be busy with her duties in town. Don't impose." "It's no imposition," Lillian assured him quickly. "I'd be happy to visit. Perhaps you could all show me more of the countryside when I'm settled." The brightening of Samuel's face was matched by the surprised pleasure in Owen's eyes. The wagon from town arrived just before noon, driven by Mr. Harper, the owner of the general store and head of the school board. "Miss Zachary," he greeted her jovially, "welcome to Mineral Park, though I hear you've already had quite an introduction to our territory." "Indeed I have, Mr. Harper," she replied with a smile. "Thanks to Mr. Grayson and his sons, I'm here to tell the tale." As her luggage was loaded onto the wagon, Lillian found herself reluctant to leave. The boys hovered nearby, Samuel openly disappointed, and Thomas trying to hide his feelings behind a stoic expression that mimicked his father's. "We'll see you at school on Monday, Miss Zachary," Thomas said formally, extending his hand to shake hers like a grown man. "I look forward to it, Thomas," she replied, shaking his hand before impulsively giving both boys quick hugs that left them blushing. Owen walked her to the wagon, carrying her heaviest trunk as if it weighed nothing. "Mineral Park isn't much compared to Boston," he said as he secured her luggage, "but it's a good community. You'll be welcome here." "I already feel welcome," she answered honestly. He helped her onto the wagon seat, his strong hands gentle at her waist. When she was settled, he stepped back, squinting up at her in the midday sun. "If you need anything, send word. We're not far." "Thank you, Owen," she said softly, "for everything." As the wagon pulled away, Lillian looked back to see the three Graysons standing in the yard watching her go. The boys waved enthusiastically, but it was Owen's steady gaze that followed her long after the ranch disappeared from view. "Fine family, the Graysons," Mr. Harper commented as they traveled. "Owen's had it rough since his wife died, but he's raised those boys right." "They seem like wonderful children," Lillian agreed. "He's built that ranch into one of the most successful in the territory, too. Started with nothing after the war." Mr. Harper glanced at her with a knowing smile. "Half the single women in Mineral Park have set their caps for him, but he's shown no interest, devoted to those boys and his ranch." Lillian felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure he has his reasons," she replied neutrally, though she couldn't help wondering about the widower who had rescued her. Mineral Park proved to be larger than Lillian expected, with a main street boasting a church, general store, saloon, hotel, and various shops. The schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, a simple clapboard building with a bell tower, Mrs. Landry's boarding house was a two-story structure with a neat garden in front. The widow Landry herself greeted Lillian warmly, showing her to a comfortable room on the second floor. "School starts Monday," Mrs. Landry informed her as she helped Lillian unpack. "You'll have about 20 children, ages 6 to 15. The Grayson boys are among the oldest still in school." "I met them yesterday during my adventure," Lillian replied. "They seem very bright. Owen's done right by them, teaching them himself when he could, but a man can only do so much." Mrs. Landry straightened a doily on the dresser. "The whole town's been looking forward to having a proper teacher again. Our last one left 6 months ago to get married." The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind as Lillian prepared the schoolhouse, met with parents, and acquainted herself with the town. Everywhere she went, people mentioned the stagecoach attack and Owen Grayson's timely rescue. "Not surprised it was Owen who saved you, Mrs. Harper said as she helped Lillian select supplies at the general store. "He has a way of being in the right place when needed." Monday morning arrived clear and cool, with Lillian at the schoolhouse an hour early, nervous energy making sleep impossible. She arranged books, wrote her name on the blackboard, and placed an apple on her desk, a tradition from her own school days. The children began arriving in groups, some on foot from town, others on horseback or in wagons from outlying farms and ranches. Each introduced themselves shyly, taking their seats with curious glances at their new teacher. Thomas and Samuel Grayson arrived just before the bell, their clothes cleaner and hair neater than when she'd first met them. They greeted her politely, but with warm smiles that held recognition of their shared adventure. "Pa says to tell you hello," Samuel whispered as he passed her desk. The school day went smoothly, with Lillian assessing each child's abilities and setting them appropriate work. The Grayson boys were indeed bright, with Thomas showing a particular aptitude for mathematics and Samuel revealing a talent for storytelling. As the children filed out at day's end, Lillian was surprised to see Owen waiting outside, leaning against a fence post. He straightened when he saw her, removing his hat. "Miss Zachary," he greeted her, "hope the boys behaved themselves." "Perfectly," she assured him with a smile. "They're a credit to your teaching." A hint of color touched his tanned cheeks at the compliment. "Came to town for supplies and thought I'd save them the ride home." The boys emerged from the schoolhouse, faces lighting up at the sight of their father. "Pa, Miss Zachary taught us about Egypt today," Samuel exclaimed. "They made buildings shaped like triangles." "Pyramids," Thomas corrected with brotherly superiority. "Did she now?" Owen replied, his eyes meeting Lillian's with amusement. "Sounds like you learned a lot on your first day." As the boys chattered about their day, Lillian found herself studying Owen in the afternoon light. Without the urgency of danger, she could appreciate the quiet strength in his posture, the laugh lines around his eyes, the way his hand rested protectively on Samuel's shoulder. "Would you join us for dinner at the hotel restaurant, Miss Zachary?" Owen asked suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. "As a thank you for teaching the boys." "Please say yes," Samuel added eagerly. Lillian hesitated only briefly. "I'd be delighted," she accepted, ignoring the knowing look from Mrs. Patterson as she collected her daughter from the schoolyard. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Mineral Park, with tablecloths and actual china plates. Owen and the boys had clearly gone home to change, arriving in clean shirts with their hair slicked down with water. Dinner conversation flowed easily, with the boys eager to share school stories, and Owen asking thoughtful questions about her teaching methods. Lillian found herself laughing more than she had in months, drawn to the warmth of this small family. "Miss Zachary used to live by the ocean, Pa," Samuel informed his father. She said it's bigger than all of Arizona territory. Is that so? Owen replied, his eyes never leaving Lillian's face. Must have been quite a change coming here. It was, she admitted, but a welcome one. I wanted adventure. Well, you certainly found that on your first day, he said with a wry smile. After dinner, Owen insisted on walking her back to the boarding house, the boys running ahead, engaged in some game of their own invention. They're wonderful children, Lillian said as they walked slowly in the twilight. You've done an amazing job raising them alone. They make it easy, he replied. Good hearts, both of them. He hesitated before adding, they've taken a shine to you. Samuel talks of little else. I'm fond of them already, she admitted. They reached the boarding house steps too soon, and Lillian found herself reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you for dinner, she said, turning to face him. It was lovely. Owen stood with his hat in his hands, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Miss Zachary, Lillian, I'm not one for fancy words, but I'd like to see you again. Properly, I mean, not just at school functions. Her heart quickened at his words. I'd like that very much, Owen. The smile that spread across his face transformed him, erasing years of worry. Sunday, I could take you on a proper tour of the area, show you the sights. Sunday would be perfect, he nodded, satisfied, and replaced his hat. Boys, he called, time to head home. Thomas and Samuel came running, breathless and grinning. Good night, Miss Zachary, they called in unison. Good night, boys, I'll see you tomorrow at school. As they walked away, Lillian heard Samuel's excited voice. Did you ask her, Pa, is she coming to visit? Hush, Samuel, Owen replied, but there was no admonishment in his tone. The next few weeks fell into a pleasant rhythm. Lillian taught during the week, often finding Owen waiting outside the schoolhouse on days he came to town. Their Sunday outings became a cherished tradition, sometimes with the boys, sometimes just the two of them when the boys stayed with friends in town. Owen showed her waterfalls hidden in canyons, ancient cliff dwellings carved into stone, and meadows carpeted with wildflowers. On horseback or in his wagon, they explored the territory surrounding Mineral Park, talking for hours about their lives, dreams, and beliefs. Lillian learned that Owen had fought for the Union during the Civil War, coming west afterward to escape painful memories. He'd met his late wife, Clara, in Arizona territory where her family ran a small general store. She was strong, he told Lillian as they sat beside a stream one Sunday afternoon, the boys fishing downstream. Had to marry a broken soldier with nothing but the clothes on his back. You built something wonderful together, Lillian said softly. Owen nodded, his eyes on his sons. She gave me those boys, taught me to love again when I thought that part of me was dead. He turned to Lillian, his gaze intense. Didn't think I'd ever feel that way again after she died. The implication of his words hung between them, unspoken but understood. In turn, Lillian shared her own story, her childhood in Boston, her parents' deaths from influenza when she was 18, her decision to become a teacher and eventually seek a position out west. I wanted something real, she explained. In Boston, everything felt contained, predictable. Out here, life feels more honest somehow. It's a harder life, Owen warned, but a more authentic one, she replied. As autumn approached, bringing cooler days and golden light, Lillian found herself increasingly drawn to Owen and his sons. The boys had become her devoted helpers at school, and Owen had become something she hadn't dared name yet, but felt with increasing certainty. The town noticed their growing closeness. Mrs. Landry teased gently about Lillian's Sunday absences, and Mrs. Harper made pointed comments about how well Lillian got along with the Grayson boys. Never seen Owen court anyone since Clara died, Mrs. Patterson observed one day as Lillian purchased fabric at the general store. Those boys need a mother, and he needs a wife. Lillian blushed but didn't disagree. The first kiss happened on a Sunday in October as they watched the sunset from a ridge above Owen's ranch. The boys had gone ahead to start dinner, leaving them alone with the spectacular view. I never tire of this, Lillian said, gesturing to the landscape painted in reds and golds by the setting sun. It's like watching the world remake itself every evening. Owen wasn't looking at the sunset. Lillian, he said, his voice low and serious. These past months have been, he struggled, then shook his head in frustration. I'm no good with words. Then don't use them, she whispered. He moved closer, his hand gentle on her cheek as he searched her eyes for permission. When she smiled, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that started tentative but quickly deepened with months of unspoken longing. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since I found you hiding under that stagecoach, he admitted. Even with dust all over me and my hair a mess, she teased, especially then. You looked terrified but ready to fight, bravest thing I'd ever seen. His thumb traced her cheekbone where the splinter had grazed her that day. Knew right then you were someone special. Hand in hand, they walked back to the ranch house where the boys had prepared a simple but earnest dinner. If Thomas and Samuel noticed the new closeness between their father and teacher, they gave no sign beyond exchanging pleased glances across the table. The next weeks brought a deepening of their relationship. Owen began calling at the boarding house more frequently, taking Lillian on walks through town in the evenings after school. They attended church together on Sundays, followed by dinner at the ranch. To the delight of the town gossips, it was clear that the widower rancher and the schoolteacher were courting. Thanksgiving approached, bringing with it preparations for the town's annual harvest celebration. The school would present a pageant, and Lillian spent extra hours helping the children practice their parts and create costumes. You're working too hard, Owen told her one evening as he walked her home after a late rehearsal. The boys say you're at the school until dark most days. It's important to the children, she replied. Many of them have never performed before. He took her hand, squeezing it gently. You're good for this town, good for those children. He paused before adding softly, good for us. The night of the pageant arrived with the schoolhouse decorated with autumn leaves and pumpkins. Every family in Mineral Park attended, crowding the small building to watch their children perform. Thomas narrated the story of the first Thanksgiving with dignified seriousness, while Samuel, dressed as a turkey, stole the show with his comical antics. The audience applauded enthusiastically, and Lillian felt a surge of pride in her students. After the performance, as families mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Owen approached Lillian with a small package wrapped in brown paper. A thank you, he explained, for all you've done for the boys, for all of us. Inside was a small leather-bound book of poetry, its pages edged in gold leaf. Thomas mentioned you like poetry, Owen said, suddenly self-conscious. Saw this in a catalog and ordered it weeks ago. It's perfect, she whispered, touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you. Later that night, after the celebration ended and the children went home with their parents, Owen helped Lillian clean the schoolhouse. Stay, he said suddenly as they finished, his voice low and urgent. Stay with us, Lillian, not just as the boys' teacher. He took a deep breath. As my wife, her heart soared at his words, but caution made her hesitate. Owen, are you certain? It's a big step for you and the boys. Never been more certain of anything, he assured her, taking her hands in his. I love you, Lillian. Have since that first day. The boys love you too. What do they think about this? Have you discussed it with them? Owen chuckled. They've been pushing me to ask you for weeks. Samuel's already decided which room at the ranch should be your study. Tears of happiness filled her eyes. Then yes, I'll marry you, Owen Grayson. Their engagement announcement at church the following Sunday caused a flurry of excitement in Mineral Park. The wedding was planned for Christmas Eve, giving them just a month to prepare. Not much time, Mrs. Landry fretted as she helped Lillian alter a cream-colored silk dress for the ceremony. But I suppose when you know, you know. I know, Lillian confirmed with certainty. The past months had shown her Owen's character, his integrity, his gentleness with his sons, his quiet strength. She loved him with a depth that sometimes startled her. December brought cold weather and preparations for both Christmas and the wedding. The boys were beside themselves with excitement, helping decorate the ranch house and riding into town daily with Owen to check on arrangements. "Will you be our mother now?" Samuel asked one afternoon as he helped Lillian pack her belongings at the boarding house. "Officially, I mean, if you'd like me to be," she replied carefully. "I'd never try to replace your mother, Samuel, but I would be honored to be a mother to you in my own way." The boy nodded solemnly. "I don't really remember her much. Thomas does, but I was little when she died." He folded a handkerchief with exaggerated care. "Pa says she'd be happy about you, says she'd want him to be happy again." "Your father is a wise man," Lillian said, blinking back tears. 2 days before the wedding, as Lillian finished her last day of teaching before the Christmas holiday, she was surprised to find not Owen but Sheriff Mills waiting outside the schoolhouse. "Miss Zachary," he said, his expression grave, "I need you to come with me right away." Fear clutched at her heart. "What's happened? Is it Owen, the boys?" "They're alive," the sheriff assured her quickly. "But there's been trouble. Those bandits from before they came back. Seems they recognized the Grayson place when they passed it, decided to settle scores." The ride to the ranch was the longest of Lillian's life. Sheriff Mills explained that a neighbor had alerted him after seeing smoke from the Grayson property. Owen and the boys were out checking cattle when they attacked, set fire to the barn. Owen was shot trying to save the horses. "How bad?" Lillian managed to ask. "Bad enough. Doctor's with him now." The ranch came into view, the charred remains of the barn still smoking. Men from neighboring ranches were helping clean up, leading surviving livestock to temporary pens. The house was untouched, but the destruction of the barn, the heart of any ranch, was a serious blow. Lillian ran into the house, finding Owen on his bed upstairs, pale but conscious. Thomas sat beside him, his young face set in adult worry, while Samuel paced by the window. "Lillian," Owen breathed when he saw her, attempting to sit up. "Don't move," she ordered, rushing to his side. The doctor had bandaged his shoulder and side, white linen stark against his tanned skin. "It looks worse than it is," he assured her, though his pained grimace belied his words. "Bullet went through clean. Doc says I'll heal. Pa shot one of them," Thomas reported proudly. "Sheriff's got a posse out looking for the others." "They burned the barn," Samuel added, his voice tight with anger and unshed tears. "Killed 2 horses." Lillian gathered Samuel into her arms, holding him close while reaching for Thomas's hand. "I'm just grateful you're all alive. Buildings can be rebuilt, horses replaced. Wedding might need to be postponed," Owen said regretfully. "Can't stand at the altar like this." "We can get married right here," Lillian replied firmly. "I don't need a church or fancy ceremony, I just need you." The relief in Owen's eyes was answer enough. The next day, with Owen propped up in bed, the minister performed a simple ceremony in the Grayson home. Instead of the entire town, only close friends attended the sheriff, the doctor and his wife, the Harpers, and Mrs. Landry. Lillian wore her cream silk dress as planned. Carrying wildflowers the boys had gathered from the greenhouse Owen had built for his late wife years before. Thomas stood proudly as his father's best man, while Samuel gave the bride away with solemn dignity. "I take you, Lillian Zachary, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Owen vowed, his voice weak but determined. "To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do us part." When Lillian repeated her vows, her voice didn't waver, her certainty absolute despite the circumstances. This was where she belonged with Owen and his sons, facing whatever life brought them together. "You may kiss your bride," the minister prompted with a smile. Owen pulled Lillian close with his good arm, sealing their vows with a tender kiss that held promises of healing and new beginnings. After a small celebration with cake Mrs. Landry had baked and cider Mr. Harper provided, the guests departed, leaving the new family alone. The boys, exhausted from the emotions of the past days, fell asleep early, leaving Lillian to tend to Owen. "Not exactly the wedding night I had planned," he apologized as she helped him with fresh bandages. "We have a lifetime of nights ahead," she assured him, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Rest and heal, that's all that matters now." In the quiet of their room, with Owen finally sleeping peacefully under the effects of the doctor's medicine, Lillian stood at the window, looking out at the starlit landscape. The burned barn was a dark shadow against the night sky, but already plans for rebuilding had begun. Neighbors had offered lumber, labor, and temporary shelter for livestock. This was the reality of frontier life hardship and beauty intertwined, community rising to support its own, love tested by adversity and growing stronger for it. It was everything she had sought when she left Boston, though she never imagined finding it quite this way. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, with a dusting of snow whitening the landscape. Owen was stronger, able to sit in a chair by the fireplace as they exchanged simple gifts. Thomas had carved a wooden pen holder for Lillian, while Samuel gave her a collection of pressed wildflowers he'd gathered over the summer. "For when you miss the colors in winter," he explained shyly. Lillian gave the boys' books adventure tales for Samuel and a mathematics volume for Thomas. For Owen, she had a silver pocket watch engraved with their wedding date. "I have something for you too," Owen said, nodding to Thomas, who retrieved a small box from the mantel. Inside was a delicate gold locket. When opened, it held a tiny family portrait Owen and the boys, painted by the traveling photographer who had visited Mineral Park in November. "So we're always with you," Owen explained as he fastened it around her neck. "Even when you're at school." Tears blurred Lillian's vision as she touched the precious gift. "It's perfect," she whispered, "just like this family." "We're keeping her forever, right, Pa?" Samuel asked, leaning against Lillian's chair. "Forever," Owen confirmed, his eyes never leaving his new wife's face. The winter passed with Owen healing, the barn being rebuilt, and Lillian settling into her role as both schoolteacher and rancher's wife. She moved her belongings to the ranch, making the daily journey to town to teach, returning each evening to her new family. The people of Mineral Park adjusted to the arrangement, admiring Lillian's dedication to both her students and her new family. Mrs. Landry commented more than once that she'd never seen a woman take to ranch life so naturally. "It's as if you were born for it," she told Lillian after church one Sunday. "Not born for it," Lillian corrected with a smile, "but certainly meant for it." Spring brought new life to the ranch, calves in the pastures, wildflowers on the hills, and the completion of the new barn, larger and sturdier than before. The Bandits had been caught by a posse near the Mexican border, ending that threat once and for all. One evening in April, as Lillian and Owen sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her stomach. "We'll need to add another bedroom," she said softly. "By winter." His eyes widened, then filled with such joy that Lillian felt her heart might burst. "A baby." He whispered, as if afraid speaking too loudly might break the spell. She nodded, laughing as he pulled her into a gentle embrace. "Boys," he called, his voice vibrant with happiness. "Come out here, we have news." Thomas and Samuel tumbled out of the house, curious and eager. When Owen shared the announcement, their reactions couldn't have been more different. Thomas, ever practical, immediately began calculating where the new bedroom should go, while Samuel simply whooped with delight and threw his arms around Lillian. "Another brother," he exclaimed. "Or a sister." "I don't care which, either way, it'll be perfect," Owen agreed, holding his family close as the last rays of sunlight painted the land in gold. As summer approached, Lillian continued teaching, though the school board had already begun seeking her replacement for the following year. She had decided, with Owen's full support, to focus on their growing family after the baby arrived. "I'll still teach our children," she assured him. "And perhaps others, informally, but I want to be here with you and the boys and the baby." "Whatever makes you happy makes me happy," he replied, kissing her tenderly. The baby grew steadily, making its presence known with strong kicks that delighted the boys when they felt them. Samuel took to reading stories to Lillian's belly each night, convinced the baby could hear and understand every word. Pa says babies learn even before they are born, he explained seriously. I want this one to know all about adventures. I'm sure it appreciates your dedication, Lillian assured him, exchanging amused glances with Owen. November brought the baby's arrival a strong, healthy boy they named James after Lillian's father. With his father's blue eyes and a shock of his mother's blonde hair, he was immediately adored by his older brothers. He's so small, Thomas marveled, carefully holding his new brother. Were Samuel and I ever this small, even smaller, Owen confirmed, and just as perfect. As Christmas approached, marking their first anniversary, Owen surprised Lillian with a family portrait, all 5 of them captured by the photographer who had returned to Mineral Park for the holidays. For when James is older, Owen explained, so he can see how his family began. Lillian studied the image, Owen standing tall and proud behind her chair, Thomas and Samuel on either side, baby James cradled in her arms. Such a different life than she had imagined when boarding that stagecoach a year and a half ago, yet infinitely more fulfilling. Do you ever regret it? Owen asked quietly as they prepared for bed that night. Coming west, marrying a widower with 2 boys, trading Boston for this rough country. Lillian considered the question, thinking of all that had happened since that fateful day when bandits attacked her stagecoach. The danger, yes, but also the joy. The hardships, but also the love. Not for a single moment, she answered truthfully. This is where I belong, with you, with our family. Owen pulled her close, his kiss a promise of all the years still to come. The boys were right that day, he murmured against her hair. About what? When I brought you here after the attack, I heard them whispering when they thought I wasn't listening. We should keep her forever, Samuel said. Thomas agreed. Lillian laughed softly, her heart full. Smart boys. They knew what I was only beginning to realize, Owen admitted, that you were the piece our family had been missing. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the ranch in white. Inside, the Grayson home was warm with love and promise. From stagecoach rescue to family of 5, it wasn't the journey Lillian had expected when she left Boston, but it was the destination her heart had always sought. Forever, she agreed, resting her head on his shoulder as their baby slept peacefully in the cradle beside them. That sounds just about right. As years passed, the Grayson Ranch prospered, expanding into one of the largest operations in the territory. Lillian, though no longer teaching in town, educated not only her own children, but others from neighboring ranches who came to learn in the schoolroom Owen built as an addition to their home. James grew into a thoughtful boy with his mother's love of books and his father's quiet strength. He was joined by a sister, Clara, named for Owen's first wife in a gesture that touched Thomas and Samuel deeply. 2 more brothers followed, Michael and William, completing their family. Thomas eventually took over much of the ranch management, revealing a talent for business that expanded their operations into new territory. Samuel, with his gift for words, became a writer whose stories of frontier life found eager readers back east. And through it all, Owen and Lillian remained the heart of the family, their love deepening with each passing season. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the younger children were asleep, they would sit on the porch and remember how their story began with danger, courage, and the whispered wishes of 2 boys who knew, somehow, that the schoolteacher their father rescued was meant to stay forever.